Ben Simmons had arguably the biggest fall off in recent memory. This guy went from being a player that had a potential Hall of Fame career to playing backup point guard minutes for a franchise in disarray at the blink of an eye. This has left us all to wonder what really caused this career-altering downfall. Now, before we get into that, we have to get a word from today's sponsor. Today's content is brought to you guys by Cook Unity, the guys who believe in the power of great food. The pure convenience of Cook Unity has been an absolute lifesaver for me and my fiance, with us both living very busy lives. What Cook Unity does is it gives us ready-to-eat meals crafted by real award-winning chefs in only a matter of minutes. Here's how it works. All you have to do is head on over to the app or website and set your preferences for how many meals that you want. Then you get to choose your meals, which is even more fun than you'd imagine because they have a massive selection that is tailored just to you. Once your meals arrive fresh, you can refrigerate them or heat them in a microwave oven and then enjoy. Trust me with this one, guys, the meals are so good, and honestly, you can't put a price on the convenience or peace of mind that they provide. So with Cook Unity, you could tell how fresh the food is by how rich it is in taste. Never in a million years would I have thought that I'd be getting this level of delicious steak Diane delivered right to my doorstep. I have to give Cook Unity's roster of all-star chefs a shout out for even making something like this possible. To get started with Cook Unity, go to cookunity.com/coop50 or click the link in the description below and use my code COOP50 to get 50% off of your first order of Cook Unity meals to try them out for yourself. Huge shout out to Cook Unity for sponsoring today's content. When Ben Simmons first entered the league, everyone thought that he was going to be the next great point guard. And what's terrifying is that he actually could have been one of the greats. Standing at 6'9", Ben Simmons had limitless potential thanks to his game-breaking traits, which these traits would actually get him compared to some of the best to ever do it. Both NBADraft.net and Magic Johnson would compare the game of Ben Simmons to LeBron James. Unironically at the time, LeBron James and Magic Johnson were comparisons that were all too common for Ben. But the reality was that you could see where these comparisons were coming from. There still aren't many point guards, let alone guards, that have possessed the size that Ben Simmons has. And get this, Ben Simmons wasn't this guy that was just solely size. He was also this freak athlete that took full advantage of their size and athleticism on defense to hound opposing players. Guys like this who are terrors in the open floor that have the ability to make every single pass in the book don't exactly grow on trees. Now, of course, there were some offensive setbacks and limitations, but how could you not talk yourself into the pure potential of his offensive game when he was already at what was supposed to be his all-around floor? At one point, it really did seem like Ben had the entire world in the palm of his hands. In quick succession, he had won Rookie of the Year, made 3 All-Star teams, 2 All-Defensive teams, he led the league in steals, and even made an All-NBA team. But then he passed up a dunk and Doc Rivers said this and his career just fell apart.
Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
Everybody thought that this was the undeniable part where things started to fall apart for Ben, and to the untrained eye, that's how things would seem, but honestly, we'd have to rewind to everything that took place before that to find out what really went down, as there were already cracks appearing in the foundation long before that viral moment which happened against the Hawks. The most obvious area for concern was Ben's lack of improvement. When you first enter the league, a lot of your faults can be overlooked as long as that jaw-dropping potential is still there. And well, Ben had enough of that to go around, but when the same issue keeps popping up in even your second year, your third year, your fourth year, and your fifth year, even your potential may not be enough to mask the true problem. Ben's lack of shooting at the point guard position would eventually change his overall impact and how he approached the game entirely. Teams just sagging off of Ben while daring him to shoot would be one very bad thing. But when you'd see the reluctant drives or no drives at all, because he's scared of even attempting to finish at the rim because he might get fouled, that's a completely different story. As the top comment in this video states, that's Trae Young under the basket. That's not Rudy Gobert, that's not Miles Turner, that's not Anthony Davis, that's not Victor Wembanyama. That's 6'1", 164-pound Trae Young under that basket. A potential Trae Young foul should never be as intimidating as Victor Wembanyama protecting the paint, but that's the life that Ben Simmons has lived. After all of this time, Ben Simmons still is yet to develop a jump shot or any sort of go-to move, as his career only continues to move further and further away from the greatness that it was destined for. Ben's brother had a great quote when it came to the mentality that was behind Ben's reluctance to shoot. He'd say that Ben wants to make the correct move and not the wrong move, and sometimes that's a hindrance. He'd continue saying that the acceptance of failure is something that Ben needs to be comfortable with, and that's something that will come along through hard times and experiences of losing. This quote is from 2020, and while his brother was right, unfortunately the struggles that he'd referenced would come far too late in Ben's career. If Ben had faced adversity earlier in his career and had to develop a jump shot to be successful, I bet that he would've. You have to remember that Ben was an imposing phenom for most of his life. Even at the NBA level, he was an outlier athlete. Ben, trying to be the most efficient player possible, had never felt the need to shoot until it was too late. Now, as I alluded to earlier, things ended very ugly for Ben in Philly. With that being said, he still would love to return to Philly. Anyways, beyond that, a lot of people, including myself, thought that Ben Simmons would at the very least regain some of his form in Brooklyn after that long standoff with Daryl Morey. Hear me out. Ben, who had been known for his great passing and defense, was going to a team that needed defense that also had two of the best scorers in the game in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Forget the breath of fresh air here. We're talking about, from strictly a basketball standpoint, him going to Brooklyn made sense. Call me crazy, but there's a world out there where Simmons ends up being that team's Draymond. You would think that a lineup consisting of these three would be exactly what Simmons would need for a career resurgence. Not only would that not be the case, but things would end up being so much worse than I ever could have imagined.
Nets out and running. Irving. Simmons didn't even look at the basket, but that's a good decision to get it to KD, who gets it to fall.
The same problems that would plague Ben in Philly would follow him to Brooklyn. Even the injuries, which have been a very underrated part of his career embarking on the path that it has. For those of you that don't know, Ben Simmons has had a long history of back problems. March 7th, Shams would announce that Ben Simmons would be missing the rest of the season due to a nerve impingement in his lower back. And while his team would take the fall for his issues while continuing to search for non-surgical options to treat it, ultimately it would be announced that March 14th, he'd have his second surgery since joining the Nets back in 2022. Guys, Ben Simmons has played 57 games in the past 3 seasons. At this point in time, all we can do is hope that he has a speedy recovery and that his back issues don't continue to send his career down the wrong path. If Ben was perfectly healthy and had the right mindset, then there's no doubt in my mind that this guy would at least be a very good role player. Personally, I'm not sure what's hitting harder than a Ben Simmons revenge tour. Now, I'm sure Ben living his life being up the amazing amount of money that he is hits pretty hard also, but I'm just saying, Ben, if you wanted to go on a revenge tour, I would be there for that. Look, although Ben's averages have fallen to 6.1 points, 7.9 rebounds, and 5.7 assists this past season, and he still doesn't have a jump shot, those numbers would be career highs for some players. Guys, what do you think about Ben Simmons? With all of these injuries and internal struggles, are we nearing the end of a promising player's career? Or will he come back even stronger? Guys, clicking the video on the screen right now is a great way to support my channel. I'm GetLikeCoop, bringing you guys the scoop until our next upload.